Picture the scene. The Atlanta Stadium on the afternoon of the 7th of July, 2026. Egypt are winning 2-0 against the reigning world champions. Mohamed Salah, 35 years old, this World Cup almost certainly his last, is playing the match of his international career. Mustafa Ziko has scored twice. The Egyptian defense is standing firm. The clock is past the hour mark. Argentina, Messi, Di Maria's successor generation, the side that lifted the trophy in Lusail less than 4 years ago, cannot find a way through. The Pharaohs are 11 minutes away from the greatest result in the history of Egyptian football. And then VAR reached back nearly 100 yards across approximately 90 seconds of sustained attacking play in which multiple Argentina players touched the ball and had every opportunity to reorganize defensively and disallowed Egypt's second goal. Not the goal they were about to score, the goal they had already scored, the one that had just stood, the one Zico had celebrated wildly, removing his shirt and sprinting toward the corner flag. The one that had sent the Egyptian bench into delirium and caused millions of people watching in Cairo and Alexandria and across North Africa to believe, with complete conviction, that this was Egypt's night. That goal, gone, disallowed. Because a VAR official watching the footage determined that nearly 100 yards away from where the ball entered the net, an Egyptian defender's foot had made contact with Lisandro Martinez's foot during a physical contest. The match was still 2-1 to Egypt at that point. They would score again. They would get back to 2-0. And then Argentina scored 3 times in 14 minutes. Egypt were eliminated 3-2. And the conversation that has now spread across every football-watching corner of the world is not about the comeback. It is about the decision. So what's really happening here? Let's go through it properly, because the technical facts of this VAR call, examined carefully, reveal something that goes beyond a simple disputed decision. Start with the rule itself. FIFA's protocol allows VAR to intervene when there has been a clear and obvious error in the application of the laws of the game. That phrase, clear and obvious error, is the standard. Not a possible error, not an arguable one. Clear and obvious. The rule also specifies that when an infringement occurs in the attacking phase of play, a goal can be disallowed if that infringement directly contributed to the goal. The key word there is directly. A foul on the halfway line in a build-up involving multiple subsequent ball contacts is not the same as a handball in the act of scoring. The degree of directness between the infringement and the goal matters enormously. Now apply that standard to what actually happened at the 62nd minute in Atlanta. Marwan Atiyah contested a ball with Lisandro Martinez deep in Egypt's own half. There was physical contact between them. Atiyah was adjudged to have stepped on Martinez's foot and pulled his shirt. After that contact, Egypt regained possession. The ball was played to Haissem Hassan on the left wing, a player who had been selected ahead of Omar Marmoush for this exact match. Hassan dribbled along the touchline, escaping 2 Argentine challenges. He found Mohamed Salah. Salah, with his left foot, with the outside of his boot, weighted a pass of extraordinary precision into the path of Zico. Zico took one touch and dinked the ball over the advancing Emi Martinez. From the foul to the goal, approximately 100 yards, multiple ball contacts, multiple Argentina players who touched the ball or contested possession, and VAR reached back across all of that and said the goal was invalid. Graham Scott, a former Premier League referee whose professional career was built on applying these exact laws under pressure, assessed the decision in writing with the kind of specificity that carries real institutional weight. His conclusion was that the contact amounted to nothing more than the kind of routine physical duel seen throughout football. He said that for a goal to be disallowed for a foul in the attacking phase, the offense must be clear. And, crucially, he added the principle that the further removed an incident is from the eventual goal, both in distance and in time, the clearer and more significant the offense needs to be to justify overturning the goal. By that standard, he concluded, the intervention was not justified. That is not a fan reaction. That is a former Premier League referee applying the protocol as written and concluding that VAR overstepped what the protocol authorizes. And it matters because of what happened next. Because the disallowed goal was not the only VAR story of this match. It was just the first. Here's the interesting part. Because while VAR reached nearly 100 yards back into the 62nd minute to disallow Egypt's goal, it did something quite different in the 93rd minute. Mohamed Salah drove into Argentina's penalty area. Julian Alvarez attempted to challenge him. As Salah went past, Alvarez stuck out a foot. There was contact with Salah's right foot. Salah went down. He appealed. His teammates appealed. The Egyptian bench appealed. Referee François Letixier waved play on. Argentina broke immediately on the counterattack. Lautaro Martinez delivered a cross from the right. Enzo Fernandez powered home a header. 3-2. Match over. Egypt's formal complaint to FIFA stated that VAR did not check the Salah incident. They specified that officials declined to even review whether a foul had been committed before the goal. This sits in direct and painful contrast to the 62nd minute decision, where VAR went back 100 yards and 90 seconds to find something. In the 93rd minute, for a potential foul in the area, for a potential penalty that would have kept Egypt alive, seconds before Argentina's winner, the same system found nothing to check. The Egyptian Football Association's official statement the following morning used a phrase that is carefully chosen in institutional language. It said the association cannot remain silent regarding the refereeing decisions witnessed during the match, as well as the failure to make appropriate use of the VAR system. That phrase, failure to make appropriate use, is the precise language of a federation that has reviewed the protocol, compared it to what occurred, and concluded that the system was applied inconsistently. Not that the referee was corrupt, not that a conspiracy existed, that the VAR protocol was not appropriately applied across the two most consequential moments of the match. Their complaint was officially filed against Letixier and his assistants. FIFA, asked for comment by multiple major news organizations, did not respond publicly. Now, this is where things change, because the Egypt-Argentina VAR controversy does not exist in a vacuum. It arrives as the sixth major officiating dispute at this specific tournament. The Switzerland-Qatar penalty in the first week, upheld without decisive visual evidence being shown to the watching world. Messi's challenge on Algeria's Mendy, reviewed and unchanged, described as a red card by experienced professional analysts on air. Algeria filing a formal complaint with FIFA in Zurich. Ghana denied a penalty against England, Carlos Queiroz saying VAR went for a coffee. Germany's disallowed goal against Paraguay described by multiple former professionals as one of the softest VAR calls they had seen. Belgium's Balogun suspension reversed in 48 hours through a process Belgium said involved no explanation being provided to them. 6 major controversies, 6 matches where the VAR system produced outcomes that experienced referees, coaches, federations, and former professionals publicly questioned. And in each case, the institution's response has followed the same pattern: acknowledgement, no explanation, no transparency about how the decision was reached, no visual evidence shown, no response to formal complaints. The system announces its verdict and declines to show it's working. Jose Mourinho called it daylight robbery. That phrase comes from one of the most experienced football minds of the modern era, a man who has no national stake in Egypt's qualification and every professional reason to understand what happened and why. Mido, the former Egyptian international who played in the Premier League, said something that cuts to the heart of the institutional dimension. He said today would have been a scandal for FIFA had Egypt knocked out Argentina because FIFA would have lost millions in sponsorship money. That is an allegation about institutional interest rather than a specific act of corruption. It is not the same thing as saying a specific decision was fixed. It is saying that the commercial architecture surrounding this tournament creates structural incentives that are difficult to separate entirely from how decisions are made. And in a tournament where a player's red card suspension was reversed without explanation in 48 hours, that framing, however uncomfortable, deserves to be taken seriously rather than dismissed. Think about what Egypt's tournament actually represented, separately from the controversy. They reached the knockout rounds of the World Cup for the first time in their history. They achieved their first World Cup win. Mohamed Salah became Egypt's all-time leading scorer at a World Cup. Zico emerged as one of the tournament's revelatory individual performers, the kind of player whose tournament leaves you thinking his name will be better known to the world in a year than it was at the start of the competition. Egypt's tactical organization under Hossam Hassan was genuine, disciplined, and good enough to have the world champions 2-0 down with 14 minutes remaining. These are real achievements. They existed inside the same match where the VAR decision happened. The tournament did not fail Egypt entirely. Egypt exceeded every reasonable expectation, but the manner of their exit, the disallowed goal that shouldn't have been disallowed by the standard of the protocol as written, the foul checked before the winning goal, the goalkeeping coach physically restrained from confronting the referee, Hossam Hassan saying he would never watch the World Cup again, all of that is also part of what happened in Atlanta. Both things are true simultaneously. Hassan said something in his post-match press conference that will stay with this tournament's record. He said, "Life is unfair. The world is unfair. But why isn't there any fairness in sports?" He said he was not convinced by this outcome and by the way things unfolded in this match. That is not the language of an excuse maker. It is the language of a man who spent a career in football believing that whatever else was uncertain, the rules of the game provided a framework that protected fairness, and who is now, in the most important match of his managerial career, looking at a sequence of VAR decisions and finding that the framework failed him. Zico, tearful, said at full time that the cup is directed toward Argentina. He said the injustice was clear. He said it was not fair from the referee. He is 23 years old. He scored twice in a World Cup round of 16 match against the world champions. He had his first goal disallowed by a VAR call that reached nearly 100 yards back in time. And then he watched the team he had twice put his country ahead of score 3 times to eliminate them. That is a very heavy experience for someone beginning their international career at a tournament of this significance. What the Egypt-Argentina match adds to the 2026 World Cup's record is a specific, documented, formally complained about VAR intervention that experienced officiating experts assessed as exceeding the threshold the protocol was designed to authorize. And it adds it at a moment when that intervention had direct consequences for which team of 15 players, their fans, their coaches, their families, would continue at the tournament and which would go home. The Egyptian Football Association said it cannot remain silent. FIFA has not responded. The question of what formal complaints to football's governing body actually produce in terms of accountability, transparency, or change to the way officials are appointed and overseen is one that this tournament has been asking from its second week, and that the institution responsible for answering it has, so far, declined to address. What do you think? When an experienced former referee concludes that a VAR call didn't meet the threshold the protocol requires, when a formal federation complaint is filed and met with silence, and when the pattern of decisions at this tournament has produced 6 major controversies, does that feel like the normal difficulty of officiating at the highest level? Or does it feel like something the governing body has a responsibility to address more directly and transparently than it has? If you found this worth your time, a like helps more than you'd think. Subscribe if you enjoy thoughtful football coverage, and let me know your view in the comments. I read every one.